While everyone's getting more connected, a growing movement is going the opposite direction. Meet the digital detox rebels who think the real rebellion isn't hacking the system, it's leaving it entirely. In a world of constant connectivity, disconnection has become a radical act. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day, spends over 7 hours staring at screens, and feels phantom vibrations from devices that aren't even buzzing. But a growing counterculture is pushing back. Today, we're exploring the digital detox movement, from tech executives who ban devices at home to entire communities going offline. We'll examine whether digital minimalism is becoming the new punk rock and ask the uncomfortable question. In our rush to connect everything, did we forget how to disconnect from anything? The statistics are staggering. The average American now spends 7 hours and 4 minutes per day looking at screens. That's more time than we spend sleeping. We check our phones every 10 minutes during waking hours, sending and receiving over 80 text messages daily. Among teens, the numbers are even more extreme. 45% say they're online almost constantly. But here's the kicker. 71% of people sleep with their phones within arm's reach, and 35% check their devices within 5 minutes of waking up. We've created a world where being disconnected from our devices feels more abnormal than being constantly connected to them. This constant connectivity is rewiring our brains in ways we're only beginning to understand. Studies show that heavy social media use correlates with increased rates of anxiety, depression, and ADHD-like symptoms. The mere presence of a smartphone, even when turned off, reduces cognitive performance by up to 10%. Dr. Anna Lemke, a psychiatrist at Stanford and author of Dopamine Nation, calls our devices digital cocaine. Every notification triggers a small dopamine hit, creating what researchers term intermittent variable reward, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Young people are particularly vulnerable. Suicide rates among teens have increased by 56% since 2007, the year the iPhone was released. While correlation isn't causation, the timing is impossible to ignore. Teen depression rates have skyrocketed alongside smartphone adoption, creating what some researchers call the iGen mental health crisis. We're not just dealing with individual addiction, we're confronting an entire economic system designed to capture and monetize human attention. Tech companies employ teams of neuroscientists, behavioral economists, and former casino designers to make their products as engaging as possible. Features like infinite scroll, variable ratio reinforcement schedules, and social approval feedback loops aren't bugs. They're features. The business model depends on keeping users engaged for as long as possible, turning human attention into advertising revenue. Former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris warns that we're experiencing human downgrading, the systematic erosion of human attention, empathy, and critical thinking capabilities. When the most profitable companies in history make money by capturing attention, what happens to everything else that requires deep focus? Perhaps most tellingly, the people building these technologies are increasingly rejecting them in their personal lives. Steve Jobs famously limited his children's screen time and wouldn't let them use iPads. Bill Gates didn't allow his kids to have phones until they turned 14. Former Facebook executive Sean Parker admits the platform was designed to exploit a vulnerability in human psychology. Tech executives send their children to screen-free schools, install app blockers on their own devices, and practice digital Sabbaths. If the people who understand the technology best are choosing to limit their exposure, what does that tell us about its effects on society? Enter Cal Newport, a computer science professor who sparked a movement with his book, Digital Minimalism. Newport argues that the solution isn't moderate use. It's intentional, values-based engagement with technology. Digital minimalists don't ask, is this technology useful? They ask, Is this the best way to use technology to support what I value? The movement has grown beyond individual self-help into a broader cultural phenomenon. Digital minimalists practice attention activism, consciously choosing where to direct their mental energy rather than letting algorithms decide for them. Key principles include using technology to support your values rather than distract from them, optimizing for connection rather than mere communication, and embracing high-quality leisure activities that don't require screens. Across the country, communities are experimenting with intentional disconnection. The Digital Sabbath movement encourages taking 24-hour breaks from all screens, while phone-free zones are appearing in restaurants, schools, and even entire neighborhoods. Brooklyn's analog culture movement promotes vinyl records, film photography, and handwritten letters. Participants describe feeling more present, more creative, and more connected to their immediate environment. One member told me, "When you're not constantly documenting life for social media, you actually start living it." Some communities have gone further. The town of Green Bank, West Virginia, sits in the National Radio Quiet Zone, where wireless devices are heavily restricted to protect radio telescopes. Residents report lower stress levels, stronger community bonds, and what one local called the luxury of boredom, unstructured time that allows for creativity and reflection. Paradoxically, disconnection has become a luxury service. Digital detox retreats charge thousands of dollars for phone-free experiences in scenic locations. Apps like Freedom and Cold Turkey monetize the blocking of other apps. Expensive dumb phones that only make calls and send texts are marketed to wealthy professionals seeking simplicity. This commercialization reveals both the genuine demand for digital boundaries and the inherent privilege in opting out. When disconnection requires purchasing premium services, it becomes another form of class distinction. Forward-thinking companies are recognizing the productivity costs of constant connectivity. Some now offer email sabbaths, prohibit after-hours messaging, and provide employees with meditation apps and focus training programs. France passed right to disconnect laws, requiring companies to establish hours when employees aren't expected to respond to digital communications. Portugal followed suit, making it illegal for employers to contact workers outside business hours. But critics argue this approach treats symptoms rather than causes. If the fundamental business model relies on capturing attention, can corporate wellness programs really solve the problem, or do they just make employees more efficient attention sources? For many practitioners, digital minimalism isn't just personal wellness, it's political resistance. Author Jaron Lanier calls smartphones behavior modification devices and argues that stepping away is an act of cognitive freedom. The surveillance capitalism model, described by scholar Shoshana Zuboff, turns human behavior into data that's harvested, analyzed, and sold to influence future behavior. Every click, scroll, and pause is recorded and monetized. In this context, digital detox becomes a form of conscientious objection to an economic system built on attention extraction. Digital detox rebels argue that protecting your attention is like protecting any other valuable resource. They view constant connectivity not as convenience, but as a form of digital colonization, the invasion of mental spaces that were previously private and unmonetized. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Opting out of digital systems often requires significant privilege. Uber drivers can't practice digital minimalism. Their livelihood depends on constant app connectivity. Gig economy workers need multiple apps just to piece together a living wage. Low-income families rely on smartphones for banking, job searches, and accessing government services. Students in under-resourced schools depend on devices for educational access, while their wealthier peers attend screen-free private academies. The digital divide isn't just about who has access to technology, it's about who has the luxury of refusing it. This creates a troubling dynamic where digital wellness becomes another marker of socio-economic status. The wealthy can afford analog alternatives, while everyone else remains trapped in attention economy systems designed to extract value from their engagement. Some of the most compelling models for balanced technology use come from indigenous and traditional communities that have thoughtfully integrated modern tools while preserving cultural practices and community bonds. The Amish, often stereotyped as technology rejecting, actually practice sophisticated technology evaluation. They ask whether new tools strengthen or weaken community relationships, family bonds, and spiritual practices. Only technologies that align with their values are adopted, and often in modified forms that minimize negative social impacts. Native American communities are increasingly asserting digital sovereignty, the right to control how technology is used in their territories and how their cultural knowledge is represented online. These approaches offer models for conscious, values-based technology adoption that mainstream society could learn from. This raises a crucial question. Can individual digital detox practices address the broader systemic issues created by attention economy business models? If the problem is structural, built into the fundamental economics of digital platforms, can personal solutions create meaningful change? Critics argue that focusing on individual behavior changes lets technology companies off the hook for designing exploitative systems. It's like trying to solve pollution by asking individuals to hold their breath instead of regulating industrial emissions. Others contend that individual practice can scale into collective action. When enough people adopt digital minimalism, it creates market pressure for less manipulative technologies and regulatory pressure for stronger privacy protections. The European Union's GDPR legislation and growing calls for antitrust action against big tech companies suggest that individual awareness is translating into political momentum. But the question remains, is it happening fast enough to address the mental health and democratic challenges posed by current systems? The digital detox movement faces a fundamental tension, using individual solutions to address collective problems. As more aspects of life become digitized, from healthcare to education to social services, the option to disconnect becomes increasingly limited. Yet the movement continues to grow, suggesting that people recognize something essential is at stake. Whether digital minimalism remains a privilege for the few or becomes a broader cultural shift toward more intentional technology, use may determine whether we master our digital tools or they master us. Digital detox isn't just about personal wellness. It's about reclaiming human agency in an attention economy designed to undermine it. The rebels choosing disconnection aren't just seeking peace of mind. They're asserting that human attention, creativity, and relationships shouldn't be commodified and sold to the highest bidder. But we can't ignore the uncomfortable truth. In a world where digital connectivity increasingly determines access to opportunity, the luxury of disconnection risks becoming another form of inequality. The executive who practices digital Sabbaths has different options than the gig worker whose livelihood depends on constant app availability. The real question isn't whether individual digital detox can create systemic change. It's whether we can build systems that don't require individuals to choose between technological participation and mental well-being. Can we create digital tools that serve human flourishing rather than exploit human psychology? Maybe the ultimate digital detox isn't about rejecting technology. It's about demanding technology that respects human autonomy, supports genuine connection, and enhances rather than diminishes our capacity for deep thought, creativity, and community. The digital detox rebels aren't trying to return to some pre-digital past. They're trying to create a more intentional digital future. In a world where our devices increasingly think for us, their rebellion might be the most important counterculture movement of our time.